We are starting this afternoon the session on step-by-step choreographic development. Last year, when we tried to do the same thing, we got some confusion of what we meant by the word development. This year we've tried to eliminate the confusion because what we're talking about is how we make the choreographic material that the dancers experience successful for them. The confusion we had last year is that some people thought we were talking about how do callers develop the choreography that they want to use. Where do they find it? How do they write it? And all that sort of thing. And that's not the subject we're talking about. What we're talking about is when you have an interesting, exciting piece of choreography that you'd like to share with your dancers, how do you make it possible for them to succeed? It has been my observation, and I'm one of the motivating forces behind this particular session, it's been my observation that very often callers, particularly sight callers, tend to focus on one square at the front of the hall and fail to notice that those down back, or even the one standing right beside the sight square, are not being too successful. So I have been a strong advocate for a long time of the importance of seeing to it that our customers are successful with the choreography that we provide. I have won the job of being the moderator of this session because I was at the executive committee meeting where the convention was planned and pushed for it, and so they let me have the job, and I'm Jim Mayo. I'm very pleased to have with me to share this session a gentleman to my left, Larry Davenport from out on the West Coast, and from down in Arizona. Are you in Arizona full-time, Jerry? No? Where do you live when you're not in Arizona? Anywhere. He's from Arizona and on the road, Jerry Jestin. We are all interested in this topic and in dancer success particularly, and so we are pleased that so many of you have come to share our interest. We had originally invited Norm Wilcox from Canada to be on the program, and Norm was unable to be with us this year, but he had already prepared some handout material, and so we have included that on the back of one of the sheets that you have. Even though he's not here to talk about it, he let us share with you the choreographic material that he has. One of the essential pieces for choreographic success is that the caller must understand the choreography. And I'd like to start off by looking at the first sheet, the one that has guiding principles up at the top, and just point out the importance of those things, because do we have any more? The handouts were over here to the right of the, whatever there is left is there. Before you can even begin to think about managing interesting choreography, we believe that these principles are essential. The caller must understand the formation and arrangement results of every single call that they use. Not module, every call. You need to know whether the dancers will find it ordinary and comfortable or whether they will find it unusual. And you must know that before you deliver the call. I gave a talk on this same subject several years ago, and 3 years after I'd given it, the caller who was there came up to me and he said, "I don't understand why I have to know that." He said, "If I know that the module's going to come out to the left Alameda, why do I care?" I was astounded that he could even ask the question. The reason you care is so that you can know whether the dancers are going to find that action, the next one you call, comfortable to complete from the position in which you've left them. And you must know that for every single call. Any setup that's unusual should never come to you, the caller, as a surprise. You must know it before you deliver the call that produces that. If you have an unusual routine that you want to get the dancers through, something that's different, then keep the route to the Allemande very short after that unusual action. Don't try to double up unusual actions in one sequence. One at a time if you're going to work the dancers through them. And recognize that the first time through an unusual dance experience, you might have to adjust the timing to assure dancer success. These are, I think, written in stone rules that should govern any unusual choreographic use. And having taken the opportunity to start with that, I'm going to let Larry Davenport take over and carry on with this session.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to be speaking to the handout that's down here that's titled, has Larry Davenport's examples on it. And what I tried to do with this particular handout was to give you some thoughts that I had in the first few paragraphs with regard to the topic of step-by-step choreographic development. Then I picked out an example here of something which for a lot of floors may have a certain extra added degree of difficulty in how might you get to it. What I'd like to talk about is just some of the points that I made in the first paragraphs, maybe in a little bit more detail. It's my feeling that interesting choreography can be smooth. And if you plan your work correctly, you do your homework correctly, you can maintain the smoothness of the dance at the same time that you're helping the dancer to prepare for what it is you want them to get through. That interesting choreography or that little bit that you're doing, or that nugget, if you will, may be interesting or because it feels different than what the dancer normally expects. Which means that what feels different on a mainstream floor, on a soft mainstream floor, if you will, may feel more interesting to that floor than if you take that same piece of choreography and call it on a more accomplished mainstream floor or at any given level. And so what I wanted to say is that interesting and different is sort of relative to the skill level of the floor you're working with. What's interesting is different for different dancers. It can be varied arrangements or formations. It can be something that's just unexpected. And as Jim said, we're not here to roll out a bunch of what these kinds of unexpected or difference might be, but how might you get your dancers through it. You need to be aware that interesting may raise the level of difficulty. One of the reasons that something is interesting to some dancers is because it's new to them, and so therefore it may be a bit more difficult for them. So the success of interesting or different or whatever you want to call this choreography, it really depends on your preparation as a caller and the preparation that you give the dancers. And so there really is no substitute for doing your homework for the material you're going to use, because if you're going to have control over the dance floor and be able to guide people through it, if you're not first totally familiar with the material you're going to use, it's very difficult to do that. And you have to realize that preparation is in two parts. It's not just the homework that you do so that you're familiar with that material, but you also have to think through what's going to make it easy for the dancers to get through that material. What is your preparation steps going to be for the dancers? And so it's something that you really you can't set aside. So the two principles I talked about here, at least from my opinion, one is that each dance should be approached the same way, regardless of the level of the floor. The nature of the choreography or the level of difficulty of the material will change depending on that particular program you're calling, that particular skill set of the dancers, the particular phase of the moon that night. But the principles that you're going to apply should be the same. The relative difficulty of the material you're going to use for a floor may not change. You just have to realize that you're comparing it to the floor you're calling for. And when I refer to the level, the floor, I'm not just talking to a plus program or a mainstream program or whatever, but I'm also talking to the skill level of the dancers on that floor. And some nights, Alaman left may be difficult for a particular group, and other nights you can't find something that's difficult for that group, and it may be the same program you're calling. So the second principle that I put down here is that I think you also have to realize that good dancing and good dancers begins with the teaching that is done for them. If you have dancers on the floor who really are very weak and really have a high lack of confidence, if you will, and a definite lack of skill level, what you can do with that floor is going to be different. So if you're not the teacher of those dancers, then you don't have as much control over it as if this is your home club and you're responsible for training your dancers. You have a lot of control over the teaching aspect of it. And I think when I think about the good dancing and good dancers begins with good teaching, I think of correct use of definitions, adequate repetition during the program, the teaching program, to build dancer understanding and skill, but adequate variety as well to develop dancers' total understanding and to increase the enjoyment of the dancing that they do. Key to success for dancers is to build dancer confidence. And you start that in class, and you develop dancer confidence there. But that every dance you call, at least my opinion is that first thing you're doing on any night is to build dancers' confidence for that night. That's going to have an effect on what you're going to be able to do with the dancers that you're calling for that night. Principles of choreographic development, I think some of them, I'm basically repeating what Jim has said, but I'll go through the list of things I had here anyway. Formation and arrangement awareness. If you don't have a grasp of formation arrangement awareness, your ability to do things with the dancers on the floor, your ability to move through choreography is certainly impeded. An awareness of what is the difficulty, what is the degree of difficulty for dancers that you're calling for, and that can change dance by dance, group by group. Command of choreographic management and control. If you cannot readily normalize formations and arrangements to those that are comfortable for the dancers, if you can't readily move dancers to achieve resolution, if you can't readily make choreographic decisions that will maintain smooth flow, then it increases your difficulty with working with this kind of material. If you have those skill sets that I've just talked about, then you have the ability to provide flexibility, to have flexibility to adjust to the degree of difficulty and help dancers maintain their success. And certainly what you do on the dance floor has got to be based on judgment as well. And I think all these things I've talked about come down to, at the end, then you have to use judgment as to how you're controlling the floor that night. I've already touched on the teaching aspect, so but I did want to touch on a few things in terms of awareness of formations for dancers. I mean, in addition to providing a solid grounding in the basics, providing understanding of the definitions, you want to provide dancers with enough formation awareness that's going to be beneficial for them for what's appropriate. And as an example, ocean waves. Dancers know what right-hand ocean waves are. They know what left-hand ocean waves are. They know you've got ocean waves with the gents on the outside, girls in the middle, and the other arrangements. The purpose here is not to provide dancers with a technical training, but they need to know that if they're in an ocean wave with same sex facing out as opposed to a normal right-handed ocean wave with the gents on the outside, that's allowable and it should be comfortable for them. That kind of formation awareness is going to help as you build this kind of choreography. So when we get down to talking about developing the choreographic feature, the tip, or the goal, if you will, dancers may not get through that figure the first time without help, depending on what you've designed. So you're going to have less chance of success if you call it cold. If you have this great thing you want to do and you just lay it out there, and one square over here does fine, 3 other squares there are not so hot, and if it's a big dance, other squares just don't have it. So you want to build up to it. And when you build up to it, you want to start with the familiar. and not familiar from the caller's point of view, but familiar from the dancer's point of view. And you want to add the necessary elements, choreographic changes to a formation arrangement that you might need so that they have a chance to see this and practice it. You're not workshopping it. You're not stopping the floor and walking them through it with what I'm talking about. And you're not telegraphing what the interesting thing at the end is going to be, but through the course of the dance that you're doing, you're giving them a chance to become familiar with the material that you want to do. And you may start in earlier tips in the evening, depending on what the piece is, and come back to it and use it later in the evening. You may develop it as part of the theme of the tip that you're doing. And also what we're talking about, the interesting piece of choreography may be a singing call figure that you want to use later, or it may be some particular get-out that you want to use. And so I just wanted to leave you with that. Last few things on this particular of what I wanted to talk about here. You need to be flexible as a caller when you're using this type of, when you're using this kind of approach. Because you may think you have the greatest plan in the world for what is the progression of things you need to do so the dancers are ready. But those dancers may respond well to your earlier material, or you might find they find it more difficult than you thought. And so that you need to be able to back off and change where you're going, give them a little bit more time to get adjusted to something that looks uncomfortable on the floor. And what I'm saying is you really need to be able to watch your floor and be able to understand what's going on out there. And in the extreme case, if that's just not the night to use that piece of equipment, that piece of choreography, be willing to let it go and do something else. The greatest piece of choreography in the world isn't going to be terribly appreciated by dancers if they're just staring at you while you call it, but they're actually not moving through it. So that's something to keep in mind. In the end, what you're trying to do is seek a method to give the dancers a chance for success. And I'm not going to go through this piece by piece at the moment. Depending on how we want to do this, we can come back to it. But if you look at what I've given you is I've given you on this particular handout the goal, which has some elements of it. And this particular goal for the tape, so they can hear it, I've from a zero box, a right and left through, past the ocean, grand swing through, explode, and right and left grand. And at least a couple of pieces that might make this more challenging for some floors is that you're doing the explode from tidal waves, and you're also doing the explode from a half sachet formation rather than a normal formation, which may be an uncomfortable explode for some people. And so that's what you're working up with. And so you can see in the suggested logical suggestion of preparation on this one to start with the familiar choreography from right-hand parallel waves. And I've given some modular examples here, progressing from normal waves to half sachet waves, from right-hand normal tidal waves to right-hand half sachet tidal waves, and that type of an approach. And so you want to do that now or later? That's what I thought, later. And so I think that's where I'll leave it. And we'll pass it on to Jerry. Thank you.
Oh. One, two. One, two, one, two, one, two. One, two, one, two. It's just not very loud, is it? You hear me out there? Really? Any of you that were here last year when we did this committee, I was on the board, or on the committee, the panel again, last year, and I didn't know until I got here, till the day before. This year I had 2 weeks' notice, and I was on the road all of those 2 weeks, so that's why you don't have another handout for me again. Basically, they're just, they've said most everything other than us giving examples on it. I'm just going to go through it. What I would say is how I'd start any dance to build, to use step-by-step choreographic development is, first of all, I would make the dancers at ease right away. Make them at ease with me, realizing probably that they're not used to dancing to me. and I would get them at ease. And there's many ways that I would use that, whatever is the best way for you. As you get the dancers at ease, you become at ease also. And the choreographic development that I like to use is a whole night. I like to develop over a whole night, not necessarily just a tip, but I like to theme the tips also. And I think that's important because I know I have an idea where I'm going. The dancers may not understand why I do it until later on. And realizing this, that I'm not going to do necessarily one tip, I also have to realize that some of the dancers are not going to dance every tip. So you got to be careful. You got to be aware of what's going on in the hall at that time, so that if you have started your development first tip and you've added on something that you're going to use later on the second tip, you're going to have to go back again the third tip before you get into it to make sure that they have success at it, because some of those people may not have danced the second tip, or some people may have been late on the first tip. So, and I think it's very important that we recognize that what's going on in the hall besides the dancing. You know, that we have control of the whole atmosphere, so that we know what's going to happen, what could happen, and we're aware of how to make it less likely or to happen badly, or more likely to happen goodly. Badly goodly. I think it's very important to have a positive progression too. And by positive progression, I mean that you are using moves from and back to very familiar spots, so that the dancers are realizing that they're doing something different, but they aren't scared of it. And they may not even realize at first that they're doing something different, because they feel so good when they start it and they feel good when they finish it. And the awareness of making the body flow in this choreographic development is very important too, so that even if they aren't sure what the call is or where we're leading them, that they can't help but fall into it. That even if their eyes have got big and their hands are out and they don't see it, all of a sudden they can't help but be there when the time comes for the end of the move. And so that means, it goes back to what both Jim and Larry have said, you need to know where everything ends. You need to know what you want to call. And everything you say should have a reason. You should have a reason for everything you say. And not just doing what we would say, getting into a module thing and just calling that module and not really thinking of where they're going. Have a reason why you're going to do a right and left through before you do the half sachet, whatever it is. That's just a minor idea. But the other thing is, let's not get wrapped up in this as callers, this choreographic development, so much that we forget that we're entertaining the people and those people are there to have a good time. Because I think that we can tend to do that because we're concentrating so hard on what we want to get done in this tip or this night, that the dancers are going good and everything's going well, and they may even be smiling a little bit, but we have really forgot that we want more than just that. And I'm not saying they're not having a good time, but remember that we really need to remember first fun. Then we get to do this other thing. As we're leading the people through it, and we run into any kind of a choreographic problem, that's a real good place to make them feel at ease, even if they do something wrong. Like if you've skipped a step and have to back up a step, I think it's real important to make them feel at ease right off. However you can do it. I love the nights where I have to make a mistake on purpose to make the dancers feel good. I wish that would happen every night. But if you understand what I'm saying, maybe you need to make a mistake early to get the dancers to feel at ease. Whether you're out of gear or out of sequence, and so that everybody looks up at you and take the blame. Stand right up there right now and say, "Oh, that was my fault. It's the first time I've ever made a mistake. or whatever. And after that, when you're going to lead those people into somewhere they may have never been, and they stumble a little bit, they won't feel so bad because you've already said it's okay. You've already said it's okay to make a mistake because this is for fun. And I think that's a very important feeling before we even start building that, is that they don't feel like we're pushing them to something they may not want to be there, and then they can't do it, and they have problems doing it. We've compounded our problem of doing some of those neat things, because there are going to be some mistakes, and I think that's an important feeling we need to develop with the dancers before we even get into that kind of choreography. I want to get their attention immediately. I want them to be aware that the rest of the dance or the rest of the tip is going to be that they can't just cruise through. I know that if I go to a hall and I can find out if I have beginners or dancers that have never danced to anything but module callers or callers that just do very similar sequences. But when you say swing through, or you say head square through 4, swing through, and you watch the boys run and bend the line, and they bend the line before you call it, I know that I'm going to have to work to get their attention to go to do some normal stuff first. So I know that how far I've got to go. Also, if you call swing through from facing couples and don't say make a wave, and you see that there's some problems, and so you know how new the dancers are at that point, and you find that out real early, and so then you're aware of how far back you need to go to start your choreographic development on it, and it may, you can't plan your night and expect to do it every time. I think Larry was leading into that. Have alternate plans, or have a halfway point, or have more than one plan for those cute things you want them to do. Don't go in there with one, because if you start calling the earlier progression into that and they can't do that, it's going to be a long night to get to that other one, and you may not want to even try to get to the other one. You better have something easier that you can do. And so it's important to be completely prepared for that. Larry talked about the helping words. As you're getting attention and you're calling, there's a lot of helping words that we use. I think early in the evening when you're calling to somebody new, you don't use, other than commands, you use very little words to start with, because you want them to have the commands. As they learn to hear your voice, then you're going to pick up, you're going to be able to use other words, other of your talk besides the commands. And when you want to get their attention, you want to have a word out there while they're dancing. You say, careful, get ready, easy now, and they're still dancing. And the next call, they've perked their ears up a little bit to say, okay, it's not going to be what I might expect I'm going to have to do. And that smooths out their reaction when you actually do the call, when actually you make that time. And that's basically what I had to say on this.
I think that's right. Is it making noise back there? But not much.
It was working earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's the battery.
That could be, yeah.
Let's stick with the other one.
We'll have to ask that when we do get questions from the floor, if we get questions from the floor, remember we wanted to get it on the tape, so we'll have to ask you to come up here to use this microphone. I think we are running out of battery power. Could be. Sometimes it's difficult to visualize choreography in your head. Some callers are better at that than others. I think it would be helpful to get a square up and let's look at some of these examples. Perhaps not necessary to start with mine, because the first one that I have here on the sheet that starts off guiding principles is really designed to lead to a fairly simple goal. I set it up to be a piece that I would expect to work in a single tip. The message that Jerry and Larry have both sent, the underlying message there is that programming your dance is important. If none of what we're talking about has any application at all, if you aren't planning your dance very carefully.
1, 2, 3.
There, isn't it amazing what a battery will do? Is that what it was? Yeah. Okay. The whole point of providing this kind of interesting choreography is, first of all, you aren't just winging it by sight calling your whole dance. These are modules that you have found or created somewhere, and you've decided your dancers would like this, and you want to give them an interesting dancing experience. I have a little problem with interesting. We've said for years and years in CALLERLAB, I think we may have invented the phrase, we need to make mainstream more interesting so dancers won't move on to other programs. I'm reasonably certain that every caller has understood that word interesting to mean difficult. We often create choreography that we callers find interesting and inflict it on the dancers because we expect they're going to be as interested as we are. I'm not sure that's always true. My good friend Bill Peters worked himself to the bone trying to develop a sequence that would end with a Ferris wheel from which he could do a grand right and left. And he finally figured it out, and he laid it on his dance one night, and nobody even noticed. It didn't seem unusual to them. It was fascinating to him. I was telling somebody about a choreographic bit that Yikes Cameron created. Yikes, are you in the room? He was here earlier. He developed a sequence, an asymmetric sequence that used spin chain through with a mixed sex arrangement. It ended up with two-face lines. The left side, from the caller's point of view, both ends were facing in. The right side, both ends were facing out. For me, a very interesting choreographic bit. I'm sure the dancers didn't ever notice, because for them it was a two-face line. They did a wheel and deal, and the element left was there. So I think we need to be very careful that we don't get carried away in developing exciting choreography that serves our interest but doesn't mean much to the dancers. The sequence that I've worked out here is really designed to get the dancers able to enjoy the exit to a left allemande that starts, that is a sequence saying Dixie style, girls circulate, boys scoot back, and left allemande. I don't know about your dancers, but I suspect they're not that much different from mine, and on a floor where I'm not the club caller, not the usual caller, I would expect half my floor to break down if I called that cold. So I need, first of all, to find out, do they know how to do Dixie style? Many times I find they don't know how to do Dixie style. And I need to check that before I lay this whole sequence on them. Then the idea of telling girls to do one thing and boys to do something else is a step of increased difficulty. Whether it's very difficult for this group or not is something you need to find out. As Jerry has said, you need to check out what the dancers do know. So before you even think about using that ending sequence, the goal here, check. Do they do Dixie style comfortably and right? Can they do a girls do something, boys do something? Girls circulate, boys trade is a way to check that out. And the sequence that I've laid out there is steps that you could take with a group you don't know very well to, first of all, find out, do they know how to do Dixie style? The basic test for me, I don't want to do that with 4 couples doing it at once. I want to check that out with just 2 couples. And I want to be very close to a left allemande when I've discovered that they can't. And so the first setup there is check that out and don't make it very far to the Alaman. And then the next step is to see if we can do it with both pairs of couples working at the same time. And then the next sequence will check out just the boys do something. In this case, just the boys do the scoot back. And after you've verified that they can do each piece of it, then you can put the whole thing together. And the bottom line that I've put in here is, after you've taken the trouble to teach this interesting choreographic bit, don't call it once and forget it. Use it for the rest of the evening. But all of that has the underlying assumption that you have a plan for your evening. It's also true that in developing choreography, if you're a club caller and you come back week after week, it's possible to develop the dancer's skill with a particular routine over a number of weeks. That, too, assumes that you have a choreographic plan for your club program. And so there's an underlying message in all of this step-by-step choreographic development, and that is program your dance, your tip, and your season. You want to run them through your routine, Larry? Maybe it's time to get a square up. Because this is easy picture is mine.
Okay. Do we have...
I don't picture you're going to go through that whole routine.
I'm not...
No, in one tip.
No, I would not.
This is something you're going to work on over the course of the evening.
This would be the course of the evening.
I wasn't thinking of dancing.
Yeah.
I picture you only walking.
Okay. We're going to use this spot right up here, right in front of us. It doesn't matter. Just 8 dancers. There we got. All right. Let's see who we got. All right. Now, one thing I want to point out in this is that I've set it up with giving you some examples of modules as an easy way to just show you how you might work some of the in pieces of this. The reality is, if you're building through the evening towards what that goal is, and you're testing your dancers, as you've heard from us up here, and you need to make some flexible judgments, be aware that if your building is all based upon modules, that you've made your ability to be flexible more difficult. If you're going to have different ways to use explode the wave, for instance, and you only have one module for explode the wave, you don't have the kinds of abilities to come back at it different ways. And so the premise here is not that you're going to build this thing choreographically module by module, but that you have an awareness, again, of formation, arrangement, and ability to move dancers so you can go through it. But let's take a look at what the examples is for not the program of the day, but just for instructional purposes. With the heads pair off, please. So what we have, if you look at the piece that we've had here, you're in your 0 box formation. So let's take a look at the pieces of this thing, right and left through. Not an expected problem. But I might note, you could be surprised because you're doing right and left through from boxes here. If you have a truly inexperienced floor, you might find that the people going into the inside to do their courtesy turn in the middle, you need to check and see whether this is a comfortable formation for all dancers on that particular evening. Particularly amongst inexperienced dancers, you may find some problems in the right and left through on the inside just from the... And you don't go to this goal. Okay? From here, past the ocean. So we have our tidal wave. Did I leave something out in this? No, I'm reading the wrong line. Grand swing through from here, if you would. I was reading further down. And so what we have at this point is we have our tidal wave, and we have, if you notice, it's each wave, it's a half sashayed wave, girls on the outside, boys in the middle. And a lot of dancers, what you're going to find, they learn their explode the wave by not the definition, not by turning towards the center, but if they only hear and explode the wave the same way every time, you get used to, I'm going to turn this way, or I'm going to turn that way, and you find dancers having trouble with this. Now, this particular group, I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of trouble just because of the nature of the audience. Explode and, if you will. And notice, the boys had to turn left here, the girls had to turn right. And so if you've got a floor that's just used to doing an explode the wave from a normal wave, you're going to find that everybody do a U-turn back. you're going to find a lot of dancers in this position looking for something to do after that explode and so this is one of the areas of difficulty. If you call that right and left grand from here, they're sort of wandering around saying, well, where is that partner? Everybody do a U-turn back again. And from here, this is where that explode and do the right and left grand. Okay, so that's what you're trying to get to. And those are just some of the watch-outs. Promenade when you meet. We'll all find out if I wrote this thing correctly. We'll find out if the program I used to check it is a good program. Okay? And if you transcribed it correctly. All right. So what I'm suggesting here is I don't want to go through each one of these steps laboriously because that's not the point here. But let's just have head square through, if you would. How many? You should know. I don't have to say. The question from the floor was, I said head square through, and the question from the floor was how many? Without a number put to it, it's 4. Okay. Everybody. Yes, we do. We do. Star through, if you would. Past the ocean. So now we're in an easier, more familiar formation for the dancers if this is where you're starting somewhere in the evening, so you have parallel waves instead of the tidal wave, which might cause some difficulties. You're working this particular piece of choreography, since it's a right-handed tidal wave get-out, you don't have to spend a lot of time in seeing whether these people are comfortable with left-handed waves or not. So we have a right-handed wave, normal right-handed wave, so explode the wave. And you might have, you're following what Jerry said, you can watch the dancers and see how many did a right-hand pull by. And without the helper words, just to find out where that particular group is. Partner trade, if you would, face back in. Do a right and left through. Star through. Hopefully, Alaman left. Come back. And so that kind of sequence, I've obviously, from here, didn't worry about what my module was. I've worked this thing through, but I just wanted to see where we were. Once we've got that particular kind of thing down, side square through, because you always get accused of working the heads too much if you just concentrate on the on one group. Do a right and left through. Star through. Past the ocean. At this point, you've got some choices somewhere in the evening. You're still back in a comfort level. You've still got the parallel waves that you're dealing with. And we've ascertained that explode the wave is working comfortably. You might want to make sure that the explode and is not a concept that's going to be a problem. So explode and star through. Do a right and left through. Veer to the left. Bend the line. Pass the ocean. Explode and touch 1/4. And the point there being is that if you want to make sure that your dancers are comfortable with the explode and concept, you don't want to just do the same anything on the end of it, but what you want to come back and check out different things that you might want to put on the end there. Single file circulate. Boys run around those girls. Do a right and left through. Veer to the left. Where did I leave them all? Ferris wheel. Center star through, back out, and I think let's have those in the head position square through. I think you just matched them up. Yep. Do a right and left through if you would. Veer left, bend the line, circle home. Then you always want to see which direction did they take. Notice I didn't say circle left or circle right. I just said circle home. Just wanted to see what direction you go. All right, so you can see how you start to build that a little bit. Once you're comfortable that you've got the explode and, or the explode the wave, but you still haven't tested out in this particular case the half sashade, and you don't, at least in my case, I don't want to go right to the tidal wave necessarily, but I'd like to see what happens. So let's have the sides past the ocean. Extend. Swing through. And so now you've introduced a different formation. You've kept the comfort level of the parallel waves, but you've added another piece here where you've now gone to a half sashade wave and you want to see what happens. So explode and touch 1/4. Now in this particular case I didn't just do the explode the wave, but you know it didn't matter what you did there. Boys run around the girls. Centers, everybody star through if you would. Pass through. Wheel and deal. California twirl. Good. That's a sort of a watch out, because you do, I got everybody California twirling because I didn't specify, but I was really watching the center dancers to see if they wanted to do it with the one in front of them or one alongside. So let's have the outsides partner trade to get back in, since I didn't really say what I wanted exactly. Alaman left, come back. But they're a good group. They do what the caller says, whether they think he wanted it or not. And just to finish this off, then, you've gone through these types of things, and you want to introduce the tidal wave concept. So let's have the heads pass the ocean, if you would. Extend, fan your top. Another place to see how the level of that floor is, because that fan the top is another watch out, if you were. I didn't feel too much discomfort in calling it for this group. I might feel a lot of discomfort calling that without a bit of help with a different group, if you will. So from here, explode the wave. Let's see what happens. Trade by. Star through. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Center is California twirl. Alaman left, come back and promenade. And so you can build it up this way. And the last thing, I don't know, do you want me to take this a little further to the thing? Oh, okay. So the last thing, you've gotten comfortable now with the tidal waves. You've seen the explode the waves from there. The last thing you really need in order to call this are the half sachet tidal waves and the explode and from the tidal waves. So let's have the heads pass the ocean, if you would. No, I'm not. Extend. Fan the top again. All right. Explode and touch 1/4. Scoot back. Boy run around the girl. Do-si-do to a tidal wave. Girls trade. Grand swing through and watch to see if you get that turn in the middle or not. Explode and touch 1/4. Now, what you don't want to do the first time you do the explode and from that half sachet tidal wave is you don't want to do your get out at that point, because you haven't ascertained that you've got everybody turning the right way. So you want to do something else that'll get you to see where you are at that. So boys run around the girls, pass through, bend the line, circle home. Nobody circled right yet. Of course, it was the longest way to go. So at this point, you can go back and you can do you put your whole figure together, and just because it runs better this way, I'll pick on the heads again. Heads square through. Do a right and left through. Pass the ocean. Grand swing through. Explode and the right and left grand. And at this point, we saw one turn going the opposite direction. But by and large, people found their partner and were able to complete the move, and so you've built towards it. And by the time you got there, your group of dancers, another thing to say about this, your group of dancers may have been that good from the beginning, but if you made that assumption they were that good and didn't test it out, you weren't doing all you could do to make sure you were successful that night. Okay, I think that takes that one far enough. Get our comment on the mic.
1, 2.
I was the one who turned the wrong way, and what I felt in that was not because of turning the wrong way, it was the identification of that wave in the tidal wave formation. Okay. So it was like, I'm lost in here in the middle, and I went with the wrong group of 4.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. If the dancers, it comes back to formation awareness for the dancers. If the dancers are not aware of the 4 dancers they're working with, that explode and, that can be a natural thing to happen. And so you have to make sure in your build-up to it that the dancers get used in that tidal wave of who is the 4 they're working with.
It's absolutely a sure thing that an explode from a tidal wave is going to open that question. We as callers need to know that that's a built-in difficult point and work to eliminate the problems that will cause. You don't say that's because of weak dancers. That's going to be difficult even for very good dancers on some occasions, because it is very difficult in a wave for at least a couple of the people to figure out which wave they're in. And if we don't know as callers that that's true, then we just brush by that, and it can get us in a lot of trouble.
So Larry understood that, first of all, when we call explode the wave, the boys are going to turn right and the girls are going to turn left in a normal situation. To get to the right and left grand, we have to do it completely, everybody going the opposite direction of normal. So we've gone to a big build-up to get that far in most cases when your dancers are there. The other thing is that we're in a tidal wave and we can't find that wave, which she told us. We could have set up the ending to have the boys trade first before you did the explode the wave. That would designate the centers of each wave. That would have given that girl her standing position, and then we didn't have to worry about which way we were going. And so that now Larry might have changed it and put them in that tidal wave and have the boys trade.
And if there's one point we'd like to make, it is that we ought to think about all the choreography that we're presenting in this way. You show it without worrying about whether you come out with the right person.
Well,
Don't try to resolve with it, but go ahead and show what you're talking about.
Heads lead to the right. Past the ocean. Grand swing through. Good. Boys trade. Explode and touch a quarter. Boy run around the girl. So I've given you that motion there. Grand swing through. Right. Then a left if you can. Boys trade. Explode and single circle to a wave. So they've turned the right way because I've given the two girls a standing portion at that point and letting the boy designate where the wave is. So I've helped them, and I didn't even have to use a word to do it. Now, for the setup to the right and left grand, I'd have to be sure where I was. All right?
That's the point we're trying to make, exactly.
Thank you, dancers.
Jerry, you want to?
Yeah, do you want to change people?
Sure. Their choice.
I like Pam up there, but you can sit if you like. I'm going to put some music on if I can for a minute.
Got a question?
Give us your name.
Oh, yeah, Ron Marcus from Tucson, Arizona. One of the things about that routine that strikes me as uncomfortable is the right and left through before the past the ocean. Now, is that... And the reason it strikes me as uncomfortable is because as they're going, they're moving actually to the left. Dancers have to kind of adjust themselves to come back to the right and then past the ocean. I would much prefer the sequence that Jerry did with where he had them lead to the right or just get to the right somehow and then past the ocean without the right and left through. That somehow strikes me like a right and left through swing through. Strikes me as an uncomfortable sort of thing for dancers to have to do. Is that only a perception on my part that really isn't valid? I don't know.
Do you want to answer that? Technically, the right and left through is on a focal point, and technically, and they really are not moving to the left.
That's a level of fussiness that I would agree with you. If you're being very picky about smoothness, it is one that I would not normally choose to include. On the other hand, I'm willing to pay some smoothness prices for choreographic interest. And if I need to pay that price in order to get the choreographic value of this routine, then that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Those are trade-offs that we make every single call we give all the way through a dance.
And we give those sometimes more than we know.
John, in this particular case, if that's an issue with it, that right and left through was not essential to where we were going. That happened to be just from that particular setup, and so you can identify that and simply another way that avoided that to get to that particular setup. That just happened to be a quick setup to go through that routine.
But it's a very good point, and it helps me to make one that is very popular with me, is that we are constantly making those trade-off judgments as we call. And I'm willing to sacrifice smoothness once in a while in order to get some choreographic value. But I don't want to do it all night long, and my particular style of calling is to emphasize smoothness. So I make that choice less often than some others. I'm not as interested in choreographic whiz-bang as I am in a smooth dancing experience. But that's an individual choice that you make that determines what your dance feels like and how interesting it is, and each of us makes it every call we give.
Okay, I just want to just do a couple starts here, and then I want to explain what I'm going to do here. 8 to the middle, and you come right back. Weave the ring. Meet your partner. Touch 1/4. Boy run around the girl. Circle the closest way home. We got a little smile, even out of the callers. We got a little smile out there. Okay, that was what I'm meaning. I'm going to relax those people right away. So we're going to do this. Now, what I'm going to go into and lead into, I would not do this in one tip in most dances. This is going to take a night, and if you're calling for your own club, you may use this more longer than that. And it's something that I like to do as a variation that is very simple. Heads lead to the right. Swing through. Heads trade. And we give them time at that point. I put them with their original partner so that they had an idea of who they were if they really knew who they were. Okay? I wanted them to remember who they are. Okay, now, again, I would not have... You're going to need that later, but I would not have walked into that cold. I have some other starts, and I would have made you think about who you were a little bit more before we did that. Do a walk and dodge, and a partner trade, and a right or left 3. Flutter wheel. Now the boys walk, the girls dodge. Single hinge. Centers trade. Single hinge. Girls trade. I used the walk and dodge from a normal setup. I went to a position where I had the girls trade where they were not touching each other because I'm going to use that later also. So this is a bunch of stuff that I'm using in one sequence that I'm leading into for a get out later on, or not a get out, just some stuff that I like to do to be able to dance you through it. Pass through, wheel and deal. Centers, pass through, slide through, reverse the flutter. Everybody pass the ocean. Fan the top. Grand swing through, right and a left. Boys trade. Boy run around the girls. Couples hinge. Bend the line. Boys walk. Girls dodge. Swing through. Centers trade. Girls trade. So I've gone back to reinforce that spot. Up to the middle and you come right back. Then a right or left through and you turn right here. Pass the ocean. Boys circulate. Swing through. Boys trade. All 8 circulate. Again, I'm putting them with their partners. Sides trade. Scoot back. Good. Boy run around the girls. Reverse flutter. I've done the walk, the boys walk, girls dodge. I'm going to do it this way now. Girls walk, boys dodge. Notice the body flow. We did it after reverse flutter wheel, so it was smooth for the girl to walk and the boy to dodge. This is probably uncommon from any of the other designated walk and dodges, but it was body flowed so that they would go into it. Now, I know that they're in a left-handed ocean wave once we're done this, and we're not very normal at this point either. But I've got the boys looking in, the girls looking out, so I could do walk and dodge, realizing the girls are dodging the wrong way, but the boys are used to being walkers from that position. Everybody do a U-turn back and see which way they turn, if they follow their body flow or went back to the original rule. In this case, they should have went back to the original rule because we stopped. Pass the ocean, make me a wave. Swing through. Boy run around the girls. Ferris wheel. Double pass through, no hands in the air, please. Put centers in. Boys wheel around. Couples circulate, go forward. Good. Ferris wheel. I'm going to jump ahead a little as we're doing this now. In the center, head girls walk, side girls dodge. Now they had to know who they were, so I wouldn't have jumped into this real quick. So we've done that. Girls trade. Side girls run around the head girls. Now I knew who they were, because if I didn't know who they were and the wrong girls ran, and I was looking at the wrong square, I'm in trouble. Okay, so I had to know where they were going to end up. Well, I mean, I stepped that up. I was telling you that. This is early, okay? Zoom. Side boys walk, head boys dodge. Boys trade. Walk and dodge. Now this time they were expecting me to have a head boy or side boy run. They were thinking about it, but they didn't need it. So I didn't do it. And it was still smooth on the body flow at this point.
Now you got to really know who you are at this point. In your groups, heads walk, sides dodge. And you had to know where you were going to be. If you didn't know that this was going to go to a left-handed wave, you're in trouble at that point. Okay? Girls run around the boys. First couple go left, next couple go right. The reason it was that way was because that girl was running to the left. First couple, it had to go left. I couldn't have done it the other way. Had I had the run from the other side, I would have had the first couple go right, the next couple go left. Again, worrying about body flow and making it easy so they would fall right into it. Then a right or left through, turn to honey. Dixie style, make an ocean wave. Good. Boys walk and dodge. Good. Now, and again, I'm skipping ahead here. I wouldn't be doing this all at one time. This is all in a lead up the whole night long. At this point, boys hold on to each other. Boys walk, girls dodge. Walk. Girls walk and dodge, boys partner trade. Slide through. Boys trade. And that girl that's not looking out, please look out over in the far side. Couple circulate, go forward. And I would have at that point been, I saw that there was some girls looking the wrong way. I said, all the girls are looking the same way as the boys. Had I saw that the boys were looking wrong, I said, all the boys would have left hands joined and all the girls are looking the same way as the boys. I would not have gone on until I give them every opportunity to be right before I made the next call. Somebody will help you. There is the one person, there is the chance that you can't wait quite for everybody. That girl may have thought she was right and nobody was going to help her, and pretty soon one of the girls that was correct turned around and then they're all really wrong. But that didn't happen because we had good dancers here. Ferris wheel. In the middle. Square through 3. Find the corner. Alamana left with the corner. Come back. Now, I would have used a little bit of this here too, and I'm on getting into the starting position from this setup here. Where are we at? Heads. No, let's do this. Everybody promenade. Don't stop. Keep going. Heads wheel around. Right or left through when you turn them. Flutter wheel. Sweep 1/4. Now, I would not walk into this one either because I wanted to make sure they could do a split circulate. Touch 1/4. Everybody split circulate. Split circulate again. Only the centers do an element left. Everybody look for your partner. Right or left grand. Grand right or left, you go around the ring. When you meet your girl, hook right on and you promenade home. And again, I'm going to go back because I would have done that earlier in the evening. And then I'm going to do this. Heads lead to the right. Veer left. Couples circulate. Go forward. Ferris wheel. In the center only, boys walk, girls dodge. We've gone back to our designation. Only those facing do an element left. Everybody do a right or left grand. Grand right or left, you go around the ring. Nothing hard. And even if they fell on their faces, they knew who their partner was that was right beside them, and they were going to go it. And even if that person in the middle turned around and did an element left, I didn't lose anything because they knew I was right. Even if I didn't want them to do it, I was okay. So that's to me, that was a whole night build-up on something that's so easy and yet so unused. And I want to caution you, though. That's a lot. What they did was not, I wouldn't walk in and call. I would have started right from the word go with little things all night long building up to that.
And if you're a club caller, you could probably make that last for 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
Working dancers up to be comfortable dancing that.
Let's have the square rest. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much. Jerry just gave us a wonderful demonstration of the principles that I had back at the top of that first sheet. All the way through that whole routine, he knew exactly what each call accomplished. What was going to be unusual for the dancers, what the body flow was, what the next action they would fall into. The only way you do that is by knowing every single step. What's going to happen next, how it's going to feel to the dancers, where the trouble spots are going to be. And if there's one message we would like to have you go away from this session with, it is that this stuff is not sight called accidental. You plan it, you know it, you use it, you work it with checkers. You cannot take a routine like that. The temptation is always to say, oh, wasn't that great? I'm going to go home and call that for my club. And you take the end process that he spent the whole evening working people up to and try to call it for your club on the third tip. Doesn't work that way. Question, but you got to come up here and use this. Why don't I go down on the floor? Because I'd like to open the session now to questions and get you involved in it after that shameless attempt to sell tapes. Oh, yes, the patter record, was that G-string?
No, it's Buzzy's Hoedown on...
Buzzy's Hoedown on Rockin' M. Rockin' M.
Rockin' M.
One of those Rockins, anyway. But the only way you're going to capture that routine, of course, is to buy the tape.
I'll sell it to you here.
That's the one he couldn't get to because he was on the road.
John Metcalf, Nixon, Missouri. I got a comment and a question. First of all, I do a weekend with Jerry every year, and this weekend is a mainstream weekend, and we have brand new dancers come to this weekend, and he works the most amazing stuff like this through that I'm in awe every year at how he can do this. So what I'm saying is this is what he's saying really works with brand new people. He gets them through it, you know. And so it's really simple. Now the next question is I don't call very much. I call for one club every week. I got to change my material every week. And when I do go out and call, I like to theme things myself for a whole night. And but with a caller like me, since I'm a local caller, they'll get a paper on my last big thing on the end. All of a sudden, they get a paper cup and start passing it around, and they have people coming in and out of the squares, and they destroy it. How do I make this work for me? Since I'm not a professional caller, since I'm just a local guy calling once or twice a week, how do I make this work for me?
Let me take a pass at that because I am one. So is Larry. The answer is you don't. You cannot develop that kind of material on the kind of a schedule that we do who go to work every day. I gave up going to work a while back, but I remember the experience very well. And I think that square dancing gets itself in a lot of trouble because we try. Because we look at a routine like that and we say, oh, that was great. And I look at some of the stuff that comes in the magazines, and I have to accept the fact that I'm not going to be able to invest the amount of effort. The saving grace is that you don't have to. The people that come to your dance come for a different reason than they go to his dance. And yes, he can do that because he uses that material over and over with different people. He gets the opportunity to use it. He gets the time to work it out, and that's his job. That's what he gets paid for. You have a job in addition to that, and we're never going to be able to do that as local club callers. But it is fun to take a routine like that and spend a season working on it. Instead of trying to do it all in one night, plan your season and say, this season I'm going to take that end result and I'm going to work toward it for 2 or 3 months, week after week. Because our dancers don't get anywhere near as bored as we think they do. And if you throw in one little piece of that routine each week, you can get them to it down the line. And in the process, make yourself familiar with it.
And that's what I was saying. I wanted to caution you that you can't do that. Because that's what I do. That's what I did. I hope that you take a piece of it and use it, and then you have something new come into your mind about how to do it. And the next time I see you, I work with you, and I see you do a little piece of what I had done, and then you end it differently, then you've helped me also. And again, remember that it may be fun for us to try to get there, but I still was considerate of the dancers the whole time I called that. The dancers are first, not us. And if I couldn't have got away with that stuff and had the dancers smiling, I was wrong to have done it. Now, remember that. That's the important thing. In anything you do, the dancers are the important people. We are not. We entertain them, and that's our importance.
And I think the other thing to remember is that variety comes under many definitions. If you're calling for the same group every week, you need to think about what variety is. If you happen to always use normal right-handed waves and your dancers don't see half sachet waves, that's variety to them. And so you don't have to do anything grand and glorious and come up with a new program every week, but if you just simply theme your weeks, if you emphasize different calls and some different arrangements and formations you can do from those different calls on a given night and proceed that way, you can buy a lot of material with a little bit of work that covers a lot of time.
Just as we get the mic over here, I also do work similar to a home program, only more. I call in the retirement areas during the wintertime, where I have some dancers that dance to me 4 times a week. Now, I know what you're going through at home. You get the same dancers once a week, but it's the same dancers and you're the same caller. I'm the same caller. And I have it doubled because then I have half the crowd only sees me that once. And I've got to entertain the people that are brand new, and then those couples that are there 4 times a week dancing to me. And so I have to work harder. That's why I have more of this, but I also call 600 sessions a year. And I mean, there's no amount of practice is going to give a local caller that kind of stuff. So I just want that word of caution in there. You got to do your part. You do what you can, and use it to your limit, but do it to your best.
That's not a handicap. The important thing to remember is that a little of that goes a very, very long way with a local club. Most of the reason that the people come to a club is to enjoy each other's company, and if you can then let them dance with the music and flow comfortably and not stretch their heads with this kind of choreography, most of the evening is going to be that. And one little piece of that kind of choreography can spice up an entire evening for a club dancing at their regular weekly session. It's a very different situation that we're looking at as club callers than the one that Jerry faces on the road and even in the trailer parks.
And I think it was said before, but remember it. It doesn't really take that much to keep dancers interested. Many a night, and I'm a local caller. I happen to be calling 4 clubs rather than 1, but still local callers, same people every week. I will do things at the clubs that don't seem like that big a deal to me, but I'm just doing something a little bit different, and I'll invariably have people come up and say, "You really tested us tonight. That was really fun." And it really didn't seem like that much that I was doing, but it made a big impact.
Guido Haas, Lengnau, Switzerland. The several points since I had the microphone holding made me change the subject I'm talking to. I, as a club caller, calling once a week with people coming, let's say I have 1.5 squares. I cannot work it through in an entire evening because I have not everybody dancing all the time. If I had 2 squares and all non-smokers, I might get through with it, but sometimes they take they take the smoking break and they're sitting out and some of us are talking. Okay, I never get through with it in one evening. I have to split it up. But I also see my role as a club caller when I know that Jerry Jestin is coming to town or a town nearby, or Tony and Jerry are coming, any other caller is coming, and I know a little bit about their choreography, what they're using. I prepare my dancers in advance to go in that area, but I do not take away the final point. I make sure they know how to do a split circulate. I make sure to know to do something from other positions than normal, because I expect callers like Jerry, Tony, and name them, to come with unusual choreography for the average dancer, because it's their job. And I admit, if you call 600 sets a year, you have to be good eventually.
I'll let you respond to that one, Jerry.
Thank you. I think, yeah. The last time I was complimented that way was at a recording session in Dallas. We were doing I got to know the guy that does global music quite well, and I was doing a session. And after I'd done 2 records that day, I come into there and he says, He says, "You're not the best singer we had in here, but your voice comes across that you might be a real fun guy." And I looked at him. I wanted to shake.
Thanks a lot.
I said, I wanted to shake his hand. I think. I found this more and more true as we go around in our cult system. You know, the guys that are traveling around really get the cult dancers, not the dancers you get every night. And the callers, there's other callers too. Where I go in, if they know I'm coming in the next week, they prepare their dancers. I mean, if I could go prepare your dancers for you every night, that would help you too.
Like, thanks for the help. Yeah.
I mean, that's a help. I mean, it's a help. I mean, also, I still have to use the judgment. And on your other thing, I'm going to give you an idea here. This come to me when you're talking. I use this in my workshops, and if I was calling to a group on an evening where I had a dance, where I had an odd number of couples that I wanted them to dance, or they wanted to dance every tip, I use something that I don't know that too many people use. I use a rotation. Some of the higher level dancers do, but not at mainstream. I use it at beginners even, right at the first lesson. If I have 13 couples come in, how many squares do I have? 3 and a couple. And I put 2 chairs at the head position of the square next to me, and those people sit right there. I do my review as I go, and as soon as I go to an element left in a promenade home, I have that square stir the bucket. The number 4 couple goes to the chair. The number chair couple comes to number 1. Now, it's harder work for me, but those people don't sit out a whole tip, and I've been able to review with them right now. And what I have found over the years is I've got such a success rate. Those people know they're going to get back in the square. They're paying attention. If they're sitting over there on the side and there's 2 couples, they're talking. If I got 2 couples here, I got 2 here and 2 over here. And then they're not the dunce chairs. And I have to keep track of that. And my tips then run the full circuit till that same chair person is out again. And if I'm doing a dance where I do a singing call, that couple stays out for the singing call. But that's the only one they'll miss, that dance or that workshop. The next time, if I'm using cards or whatever, whoever's out will sit in the chairs, and it will come around to them, and they'll be out for the next singing call in only one session. Now, I'm warning you, it's hard, but the dancers enjoy it, and you will have more success with the dancers that way. Okay?
Beats up on a sight caller, though.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay, we've got a few more minutes here, and one more question.
I'm sure you've all learned, Dean Fischel of Minnesota, I'm sure we've all learned by doing things wrong, and Jerry probably learned by doing a lot of things wrong first, too, and planning your program is wonderful, but I'm sure you probably run into the night where your program that you planned to really teach these folks a lot of things just will not work no matter what you do, and if you keep forcing it, you get long looks and dirty looks, and by golly, you better be able to back off. Maybe it's the barometric pressure or the moon, I don't know what, but you better be able to back off and just have fun.
The last thing I'd written down here but didn't say before, when you use judgment, I mean, it's an old cliche, but remember, there's the dance you planned, the dance you called, and the dance you should have called.
You got that right. But the other point is that when we talk about programming a dance, I don't think of programming as I'm going to plan in detail everything that I'm going to do in every tip. If my end goal in tonight's program is the one that Larry has put together, I may start down the path of introducing it and discover that's not going to be working tonight. That doesn't happen. So no program should be in such detail that you can't stop it at a point that's comfortable for whoever turns up tonight.
Guido Hausling aus Switzerland. What Dan just said is partly right. I'm in the unfortunate situation that after my club night I have to drive 1.5 hours home. Those 90 minutes are a lot of wasted time because I get tired, but the 90 minutes I need to get to my club is a very precious time, because I noticed when car drivers cannot drive, my dancers cannot dance. So when you're on the road to your club, you already may notice that the car drivers are going crazy. Your dancers will go crazy. So you fine-tune your program on the way to the club. It doesn't help you if you only have 2 minutes.
Did you ever notice that the moon was full that night?
You said 2 days before and
after. Not on our topic, but again, he gives me a neat idea, and I used to do it all the time, and I do it occasionally still now. It would drive my wife crazy. I tape the dance, and on the 2 hours after we driving home, we relive the dance. And to me, it's me hearing it for the first time from an outside position, but my wife has already heard it. And that was enough that she would, not want to go to those dances with me. It gives you something to do on the way home. And be critical of yourself. Learn how to listen to yourself. That's the best thing you'll ever do, because you'll do things, I find things that I say that bother me. And so I work hard on changing those.
Even without taping, I have always found the trip home to be a very valuable time, because that's when I think back over what went wrong and try to understand why. And it's very important to try to analyze why did they have trouble, and it's from that kind of analysis that you learn the point that we had made over here, that ocean wave is hard to identify. When you called it, you hadn't thought about it maybe, but on the way home you think, why did she have trouble with that? Why didn't she turn the right direction? And that's when you discover the explanation for the difficulties so that you can avoid it the next time.
And to the gentleman who just said that there was times when I have made mistakes, you're right. I have even in the back of my mind, I remember a dance that I called that I did exactly what you said. I couldn't stop doing what I wanted them to do, and I never got hired back for that club again. But I learned a very important lesson, and I didn't do that again.
I don't understand the psychology of it, but I know that for me, I have a tendency to always go too far, to think, gee, they're doing this very well. If I took just this next step, they'd certainly be able to make that. And unfortunately, I always seem to do that on the last tip. Any more questions?
Francois Lamoureux from Munich in Germany. I just wanted to make a comment to the very first gentleman. You started off saying that you were not a professional such as Jerry. I suppose you're mixing up full-time and professional, because I think you are a professional. The pure fact that you're here shows that you're a professional, for one. And the other one, I think it's already been said now, meanwhile, the pure fact that you're being a club caller, don't estimate what you're doing, because Jerry could only come to your place and have that much fun if you, the club caller, was doing a good job teaching the people, keeping them happy, and keeping them coming back every week. That's all I wanted to say.
Dick Gaskell, San Jose. Jerry, you said early on that you have to be careful about doing unusual things early in the dance because some of the people might not be there. How far into a dance would you recommend we wait? Third tip, fourth tip, before you do anything like that to make sure everybody gets it? Part of the other problem that I've noticed is that any time that they open up the kitchen, everybody heads, they head for the food, and if you do it at that time, I know that doesn't work. So when's a good time to do that?
I think that depending on your situation, I wasn't meaning to be taken quite that way, that dancers are going to come in late. In most places they don't. They'll miss the first tip, or the squares are not even. That's what I want you to be aware of. That's what I want you to be aware of. But just be aware that maybe they won't get up till halfway through the tip as people are coming in. And even then you can see yourself. You're testing the easy stuff that early to see what people will do. I'm just saying don't do something that they need the next tip to do. And then be aware that down the line when you have built onto that somebody may not have danced there. And the other thing is if they break in the middle, you're going to be calling a couple singing calls.
And another judgment factor, if you know when the kitchen opens, they all disappear. Or you know that any given tip that evening that a lot of people are sitting around the side talking, that might not be where you want to build towards something that requires everybody being involved in every tip in order to have a chance to succeed at the end. So you just have to change your plan or have a different plan that'll take into account that you're not going to see everybody every tip.
One more question.
Dean Fischel, Minnesota again. Well, you've already hit most of it, but a lady told me when I first started calling, do not teach anything after 9 o'clock. When the dance started at 8, and 20-some years later, I still forget that occasionally, and it's disaster.
Every time you forget, you learn the hard way again, don't you?
Okay, it's been a wonderful session. We took a dry run on this last year and didn't do anywhere near as good a job. I today have the feeling that we have done what I hoped this session would do, and I hope that you have found it helpful. We appreciate you coming, and I want to thank my panelists. Jerry didn't get a chance to send it in, but he sure did great material for us. Thank you all. This was exactly what I wanted the session to be last year, and we got off on a sidetrack because Kip was. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Kip was interpreting it differently, and so we got lost on it.
Good job.
When I mean, it's true.